My name is Serena. Welcome back to the Book to Movie Club. This week, I'm so very excited to be talking about Queenie. It was just released as a series on Hulu in America and on Channel 4 in the UK. And I hope you all have watched it or at least read it so we can get into it. Queenie was written by Carty-Williams. She is a British author from South London. Before becoming an author, she wrote for publications like The Guardian, Vogue, and Refinery 29, and Queenie was her debut novel. Her follow-up novel was People Person, which was published in 2022. Along with her writing, Candace is also a showrunner. So before Queenie, she created the show Champion, which is on Netflix in America and BBC in the UK. Queenie was published in 2019, and I'm embarrassed to say that I just read it last month. I always feel a little late, and I also hate that a book being turned into a show is why I usually end up finding out about it, but there are so many books published in the world every day. So let me give myself some grace, but I did feel a little late to the party. I think I heard about Queenie for the first time last year, maybe, from TikTok. And it kept being added to the list and then pushed back on my TBR. And then I saw that the show was being made and I was like, all right, Serena, you gotta read this. And I'm so glad that I did. I'm upset at myself for being so late. I think if I had read this in 2019, it really could have helped me. I think we all have a friend like Queenie, and even some of us ourselves are the Queenie in our friend group. But let's get into what this book is about. Queenie is a 25-year-old girl living in London trying to figure out how to navigate life after her 4-year relationship has ended. She's forced to move out of their shared apartment and figure out how to cope as a newly single woman who doesn't actually want to be single. This book tells the story of Queenie's experience with stress, anxiety, depression, the choices she makes to try and cope, and her eventual mental health journey. When I think about this book now, I can't help but think about all the drama that comes up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this book, the drama is so juicy. But when I was reading it, it really hurt. Like the book has some comedy to it. There are definitely moments when I laughed out loud. But the things that happen, this isn't a rom-com. It's a coming of age story. I know 25 is an adult, but it's really a coming of age story for this girl who has experienced so much. And I'm going to spoil all of it, so buckle up. So the book starts with Queenie at a doctor's appointment, finding out that she recently or is in the midst of experiencing a miscarriage. She's there for an ordinary check-in to get some help with her birth control, and she gets some life-changing news. That evening, she wants to talk to her boyfriend about it, but the emotions of trying to even figure out what's going on with her body prove to be too much, and her boyfriend, Tom, ends up breaking up with her. He isn't aware. She isn't able to tell him that she's had a miscarriage, and so I'm going to give him some grace there, but as I was reading this, I was like, the fact that she is simping over this white man so hard is killing me. I'm sorry. But I truly was like, girl, you can do much better. But let's continue. As the book progresses, we learn more about the impact that her pregnancy and the symptoms, the hormone changes were having on her relationship before it ended. This part really, it made me really sad. Like going into her reflecting on what was happening in the weeks before her breakup, I was like, how could you be mad at yourself? How could he be mad at you? Like, you had no idea what was going on. This book is really sad when I think about it sometimes. So anyway, Queenie and Tom are on a break for who knows how long. He says he wants a clean break. She's texting him, wanting to connect, and he is like, clean break, Queenie. Leave me alone. And she doesn't know what to do with herself. She has to find an apartment in a city that she can't really afford to live in. She is adjusting to a new job, and there's just a lot of new things happening. And she wants a distraction from the heartache that she's experiencing and in my interpretation, a reminder that she is loved. And unfortunately, she tries to seek that through her relationships with other men. And that, of course, never goes well. It's not a good experience, and it's hard to read, honestly. Queenie quickly turns to sex with a lot of random men, some married men, unknowingly and knowingly, in order to try and make herself feel better as she's dealing with this breakup. In the book, these interactions are truly terrible. A lot of these men are fetishizing her. They are talking about her body. They don't treat her well. They don't want to cuddle. They don't want to hug. They don't want to go on dates. They only want to have sex. And she truly feels like that's all she deserves, I think. She thinks she can be the fun, cool, go with the flow, hook up with whoever, but it continues to add up and add up and add up and impact how she views and feels about herself until she reaches her breaking point. Some important background to know about Queenie is that she was abandoned by her father when she was a child and witnessed her mother be in an abusive relationship when she was younger as well. This really impacts her views of men, but specifically Black men, which really hurt to read, and I don't feel like the book went into enough. It brings it up, and you're just supposed to be like, yeah, it makes sense. But I don't think it does. Let me not. It does make sense. I want to read to you how this is presented in the book. So in this part of the book, Queenie is talking to her best friend who says, why don't you save yourself this drama, fam? Sorry. You need a British accent for this? Why don't you save yourself this drama, fam? Why don't you just date Black guys? Why do you think? Queenie asks, shutting her down. Sorry, no, I know. I should have thought before I said. She said flustered. Sorry, I didn't mean to snap. Queenie apologized, putting a hand on her shoulder. Remember the first family party you took me to? The one where my cousin Elias tried to move to you? Yeah. And I was so stressed by it that I started crying. Yeah, and we had to pretend it was because you had period pains. I just can't do it, Jessica. I'm scared of Black guys. I'll always think they hate me. So Queenie's past experiences with Black men have impacted the way that she thinks Black men feel about her, which in turns impacts how she interacts with them. And I think this is interesting because her reasons for believing this are valid, but she has a relationship with her grandfather who is a Black man, and the book doesn't go into how her views of Black men impact their relationship or how their relationship has allowed her to overcome her views about Black men in order to have a positive relationship with her grandfather. It also doesn't get to a point in the book where she's able to address the fears that she has. That is one part of the book where I wish there was a little more character development, because I hate to think of this Black woman thinking that Black men hate her. Anyway. There needs to be like a part 2. I need a novella about Queenie's growth past the end, where the book ends. So throughout the book, Queenie is having these negative sexual interactions with white men and one Asian guy. It gets so bad that she is suspended from her job because she has sex with a coworker who we find out is married and is about to have a child, and he doesn't want his wife to find out that he cheated on her, so he tells his job that Queenie is sexually pursuing him and being inappropriate and all of the things. Fortunately for her, they ended up having sex at work, so the cameras caught them sneaking into the bathroom together, and that's the evidence that disproves that he wasn't into her. But in the time in between him telling HR this and, things being resolved, she can't work for weeks. And she has to move in with her grandparents because she can't afford rent and all of these things. Queenie also has a very distant relationship from her mom. She's kind of cut her mom off because of the negative situations that she feels her mom put her in as a result of being in an abusive relationship. But throughout all of this, her family is like, this is your mother. We're inviting her to Christmas. We're inviting her to your birthday party. We don't care how you feel about it. And so she reaches a tipping point and starts experiencing panic attacks. And they're so bad, she passes out. She can't function. It's really bad. When she expresses interest in therapy and her grandmother finds out, her grandmother is an immigrant from Jamaica, doesn't believe mental health is an issue. She's like, please, you'll be fine. Get over it and you'll be fine. And she tries to talk Queenie out of going to therapy. That part of the book almost broke me. I almost broke down in tears hearing her grandmother tell her not to go to therapy, because I was like, y'all all need this. You need this. She needs this. She needs support. She needs help. And so to hear her grandmother be like, how dare you even think about going to therapy, really almost made me cry. Luckily, her grandfather, again, a black man who loves her, came to the grandmother and was like, yo, you need to cut it with the therapy, because imagine if we all went to therapy, how much better off we would be. You know, I was throwing flowers at grandpa because that is what she needed to hear. That's what everyone needed to hear. That really warmed my heart. Once Queenie starts going to therapy, I really loved the way that those conversations were depicted in the book. Queenie is a black woman. She's going to a white therapist, and she talks about not wanting to have to be strong all the time. Like, what it's like to be seen as being an angry black woman when you're hurting and you don't know how to express that pain. The conversation of like, you don't understand parts of my life as a white woman with me being a black woman. I think that's so important to show, because a lot of therapists in the world are white people. Like, that's just a fact of the matter. And so a lot of black people are going to have non-black therapists. And those are conversations that need to be happening in those spaces. Queenie finally going to therapy, the family's perception of therapy changing, the relationship between her therapist, all of those things made this such an amazing depiction of therapy. And I loved every part of it. At the end of the book, Queenie is not magically healed of her anxiety. She's still experiencing it, but she shows how she uses the coping skills that come up from being in therapy. And I just loved it so much. Oh, this was such a good book. Queenie was not just a book about the main character restoring her relationship with herself, but also restoring her relationship with her family, and also decentering men from her life. At the end of the book, she's in the bathroom still stressing about her ex, and her best friend walks in like, girl, I don't want to hear this. Look into this room and see all the people who are here for you, who love you. And note that Tom is not here, is nowhere to be seen, and does not need to be given as much credit as you're giving him. And she's finally like, you're absolutely right. I'm loved. I love myself. These people love me. I am supported. I have everything I need. Oh my God, I love this book. I gave this book 5 stars. So that's all I have to say about that. I think this book was fantastic. It's really interesting. I think on Storygraph, this book Queenie has like an 8.6. And people's reviews were talking about how unlikable Queenie was as a character. And that leaves me to believe that the concept of her having mental health issues just went over everybody's head. Like, there were parts that did feel a little repetitive, but I think it was important to demonstrate how much of a toll this was taking. Like, I think people think one thing happens and then people go to therapy and they get over it. But it can be like when you are told by every man in your life that you have a fat ass and that's the only reason why I want to have sex with you. Yeah, I would need therapy too. I also wouldn't know how relationships work because people keep showing up in a certain way. So it's like, what do you do? How do you navigate this? Anyway, for people to be like, she's unlikable because she keeps making bad mistakes. It's like, the girl was depressed. The girl was trying to figure out how to adjust to a new life that she didn't want. The girl had a miscarriage. Y'all are crazy. I don't know. I don't agree with those comments. I don't think she was necessarily meant to be likable, which then begs the question of like, how do you love people who are experiencing mental health issues? Which, if you watch my last video, Turtles All the Way Down had that conversation. She, in that book and movie, she's experiencing anxiety and OCD. And there is the conversation of like, can she be loved if she's experiencing these things? How does her family and friends cope with having to be so supportive of her as she's experiencing these things? And I think Queenie is another example of that. People go through hardships, things that you might not think are a big deal, but take a toll. Can you love them through that? Not everyone can, clearly. Anyway. That got really deep, but I just feel like that's important to talk about. I work in mental health, if you don't know. So I have a soft spot for these sorts of things. But now, let's talk about the show. As I previously mentioned, Queenie is available on Channel 4 in the UK and Hulu in the United States. The author, Candace Carty-Williams, like trying to get her name right, had a big part in the production of the show. She produced it, wrote a few of the episodes as well, and actually makes an appearance in the show, which I thought was really cute. So Queenie is starring Dion Brown as the title character. Her grandmother is played by Ewella Gideon. Her aunt is played by Michelle Greenidge, who is also in this season of Doctor Who. I am not a Doctor Who fan, but I really like the star of this season, whose name I can't remember, and she plays the mom of his sidekick. Anyway, so I was very excited to see her in this. Their granddad is played by Joseph Marcel, who is Jeffrey from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So happy to see him as well. Her best friend, Jessica, is played by Bella. Bella is actually a singer, and I didn't know that until I was researching for this. But she has an amazing voice. And then a new character comes into the show, which we'll talk about, and his name is Frank, and he is played by Samuel Adewumi, and I think he is gorgeous. This man is fine, okay? And I'm glad that he was there. Frank is Cheska's cousin. He helps around the house. He's always there. And seemingly, let's jump into it, has had a crush on Queenie for many, many years. The storyline, the plot of the show is very similar to to the book. The only major difference is the ending, which I'll save for now. I think the show is good. I think it's a good show. Is it as good as the book? No. In my opinion, there is not enough drama in the show to really give off the same themes in as significant a way as the book did. And I hope that makes sense. The show talks about her miscarriage. The show talks about the ways that she's trying to cope. It talks about her going to therapy. It touches on her grandmother not really wanting her to go to therapy and the grandfather having to be like, yo, she needs it. But it's just not as deep. It's a very shallow. Imagine the book is a pool of milk. No. What's a good example of this? It feels like they took the book and just raked right across the top of it. And they're like, all right, this is what we're making the show out of. Rather than going deep into the pool of all of the things that come up in the book. Again, the book is funny, but it's very drama. It's very much contemporary fiction. Like, it's not a rom-com, it's contemporary fiction. Whereas the show feels like it wants to be a rom-com. And I think it does it a disservice. In general, I think the acting is good. I think there were some awkward moments, but it was still good. The episodes are only 24 minutes, so everything happens so quickly, and I didn't like that. I felt like it could have been deeper. This is the type of show that you put on as you're folding clothes. As you're like vacuuming the house. And then if you miss something, you just like go and rewind. But you didn't have to be actively involved in watching it. which is unfortunate. Like, it could have been really good, but it was just a little disappointing. As I mentioned, the show ends differently, and that is because Frank, you know, he's sticking around. He wants Queenie, and he's not a bad guy. He could be really good for Queenie. Fortunately, they end up getting together. So good for them. But I think it does Queenie's character a disservice by still centering men in the end of this story. By the end of it, men are still, dating is still far too important, in my opinion. But I do love them together. I think they were really adorable. I think it was really cute how they got together. The show ended and I had the biggest smile on my face. I couldn't have been happier. It was a beautiful thing. But it's different. And so I think the book is for certain people. The show is for other people. I think if you really liked the book, you probably wouldn't like the series. I also think if you watched the show alone, you probably wouldn't want to read the book. But I want to encourage everyone to read this book because it's so important. So, when we ask the age-old question, which is better? Obviously, you could probably tell I'm going to say the book. I think I give the show like a 3 out of 5. The book gets a 5, the show gets a 3 out of 5, only because the changes. If I had watched it without reading the book, this is always the hard part. I may have liked it more. I may have liked it less. I have no idea. And I'll never know. But you guys let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How did you feel about Queenie and all of the shenanigans and all of the healing and all of the growth? Did you like the book more than the show? Did you like the show more than the book? The Guardian gave it a really bad review. I think they gave it a 2 stars. Let me see. Layla Latif at The Guardian says, Queenie is so half-baked. It could have been made by AI. That's wild. They gave it a 2 out of 5. The actors feel under-rehearsed. The plot lines are painful cliches, and the lead character is totally bland. This adaptation of Candace Carty-Williams' hit novel just isn't fun or funny enough. I don't agree. I think that's really harsh. I do think it was very simplified in order to fit into this Channel 4 kind of... I feel like a lot of Channel 4 shows, especially when they're... Never mind. I think Channel 4 likes fun fluff. And so I do think it was toned down a bit to fit their audience. But I don't think it's as bad as this woman is saying it is. But that's just my opinion. So... Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.